We live in an era where sequels or new installments to existing franchises are the norm, and comprise of most of the new releases these days. Consider the Final Fantasy and Tales series, both have seen around 15 main entries, and don't even get me started on spin-offs. Unfortunately, not every new installment improves upon its predecessor. A good sequel should improve upon the groundwork established by the previous game, take what worked and make it better while rectifying or removing what didn't. Suikoden 2 is an example of a near-perfect sequel, the kind that I'd best describe as exactly like the original game, but better in every conceivable way. Like the original, Suikoden 2 was a PlayStation 1 game that saw a very limited release in North America on September 29, 1999. With very few printed copies available and its late release in the PlayStation 1's life, the game quickly became a highly sought-after collector's item. Regrettably, today, the game is mostly known for the infamous high prices that it demands on eBay, rather than the quality of the game itself, which is a shame as Suikoden 2 may very well be one of the best RPGs on a system renowned for having some of the best RPGs of all time. In fact, Suikoden 2 is most likely the best RPG you haven't played. Suikoden 2 is a direct sequel to the first Suikoden, taking place years after. The story focuses on the conflict between the Kingdom of Highland and the city-states of Joustin. The game begins with a new silent protagonist and his best friend Jowie, who I really want to call Joey, witnessing the total annihilation of their unit as a part of a plot to fuel the war. The pair manage to escape, but only to be captured later by the Highland army. Just when they're about to be executed, some familiar faces from the original Suikoden rescue our heroes and begin to form a resistance against the forces of Highland. Like usual, I won't be going past a basic summary of the game's premise, as the optimal way to experience the story is to experience it firsthand yourself by playing the game. But to get the most out of the story, I recommend playing the original prior, as there are many references and reoccurring characters present here. You can understand the story just fine regardless, but for the optimal narrative experience, play Suikoden 1 first. However, I need to discuss why the story works so well. Suikoden had an okay, if a bit standard story of political intrigue with some fantasy elements. Suikoden 2 has a much more in-depth narrative with a very interesting, politically driven story that uses some fantasy elements such as the True Runes to further the story. The way some events transpire seem like something you'd witness during an episode of Game of Thrones more than something you would see during a JRPG from the 90s. But the real reason why the story is so damn interesting and engaging is because Suikoden 2 has something that many RPGs lack. A great villain. Luca Blight, the Prince of Highland, is quite possibly the best villain to ever star in a game or any form of media. He is insane, brutal, impossibly strong, and makes for a compelling character you love to hate but can't help but respect. Throughout the game, you'll witness Luca Blight destroy towns, butcher innocent people, and completely fuck shit up. The best part about him is he doesn't have any magic powers or special abilities. He's just a man with an insatiable bloodlust and the strength to feed it. I could drone on and on about why he's such a great villain, but I couldn't do it justice. But I will say this, that the fight with Luca Blight is one of the best designed boss encounters in any RPG I've ever played. Aside from Luca Blight, the rest of the story is well paced, interesting, and is incredibly effective in telling itself. The game does an excellent job of showing over telling. You know Luca is evil because you witness him doing some horrific things. You know the main character and Jowie are good friends because you see flashbacks displaying their friendship. The game's story is full of great moments that need to be experienced in person. Once again, the end goal will have you searching for the 108 Stars of Destiny, with many of them being characters from the previous game. In fact, you can even import your save data from Suikoden to influence some of their stats, and if you import a save with the best ending, you can even recruit the main character from the original, which is an awesome bonus feature. Like the last game, not all the characters get a whole lot of development, being that there are so many of them, but since there are many reoccurring characters, many come with some development already and leaves more time to develop many of the new ones. Overall, Suikoden 2 does a much better job at balancing the development of each character, but like the original, favors those more crucial to the overall story. Again, like the original, recruiting these characters is of major importance and you'll be traveling to various locations to find and enlist them. One thing that I feel is definitely improved from the last game is how you actually go about recruiting them. In Suikoden 1, many characters can only be recruited at certain points in the narrative or once you recruit enough other characters. And while some of these types of recruitment are still within Suikoden 2, many characters have you now do a very brief side quest or mini adventure for you to complete before enlisting them in your army. These types of quests are both interesting and greatly help develop these individual characters, as well as help provide some variety to your objectives. At a glance, the gameplay of this sequel may look near identical to its predecessor, and to some extent that may actually be true, but Suikoden 2 improves upon various facets of the original's gameplay. For instance, your character can run by default instead of requiring a rune upgrade to do so. Combat has also seen slight improvements in that runes are more useful than ever in each encounter, as each individually equipped rune has multiple different spells, and you'll be needing these spells since the game's overall difficulty has increased as enemies and bosses can take much more punishment. Many of the other gameplay systems from the original return, like unite attacks, weapon upgrading, and the army battles, but of all these different systems, army battles have undergone the most significant change. The rock, paper, scissors system from the first game has been replaced entirely by what is essentially a tactical RPG. The overall gameplay of this new army battle system plays like a very simple version of Final Fantasy Tactics, with you moving units one tile at a time, using attacks or runes to wipe out other enemy units. None of these battles require too much thought, with a few battles as an exception. Overall, I prefer this army battle system to the one in Suikoden 1, and as a whole, while the gameplay is comparable to the original, it's the small refinements that make Suikoden 2 a much more enjoyable experience from a gameplay perspective. And just like before, the game uses sprite-based visuals, which have seen some improvements since last time. Each character's sprite appears much more colorful with more detail and has more animation. The animation specifically does a great job at expressing a character's personality or how they feel at a particular moment. The game also incorporates various CG cutscenes throughout the game, usually to depict some important events. While these scenes are fairly dated, they are well directed and are very brief and mainly establish an event or set the appropriate mood or tone for the next major scene. Background visuals have also seen a considerable improvement, with some very impressive layering effects being used. The style of character portraits have also changed as they now use an anime art style, which looks fine and suits the game. Generally speaking, the graphics are just better while remaining consistent with the original. Overall, I love how the game looks, and the use of sprite-based visuals have also helped the game age quite well. As to be expected, the game's music is incredible, and like I said in my review of Suikoden 1, the music fits every situation it is used in perfectly. The primary difference between the two game soundtracks is that Suikoden 2's contains much more exciting tracks. Composers Miki Higashino and Kieko Fukami created a truly captivating soundtrack. Even if you don't plan on playing the game, you owe it to yourself to give the music a listen. Now, I know most of this review has basically consisted of me praising this game endlessly, but what else did you expect? Suikoden 2 is often regarded as the best game of the series, and for good reason. It has an incredibly engrossing narrative, a huge cast of captivating characters, more refined gameplay systems, and an amazing soundtrack. If I had to nitpick, my only issues with the game, which are superfluous at best, are that some of the bits of the localization are a bit spotty and sound a little goofy, but to be fair, this is an issue that most games in the 90s had. As well, like the original, some characters can be a bit obscure to recruit, and just like last time, you need to recruit all the 108 stars of Destiny to get the best possible ending. But these incredibly minor points absolutely do not detract from how good this game is. Now, the main question I'm sure many of you are thinking, is Suikoden 2 worth paying these ridiculous online prices for a physical copy? In my opinion, no. But I'm of the belief that no one should pay more than anything higher than $70 to play a freaking video game, and don't get me started on paying that just for collection's sake. But, luckily enough, Konami, before they went completely insane, finally gave in to fan demand and made Suikoden 2 available digitally on the PlayStation Network for a mere $9.99. The game can be played on a PS3, PSP, PSTV, or my preferred way, on the Vita. As such, no one has an excuse to not play this game. I cannot recommend this game enough. It's a classic that deserves the same level of recognition and respect as the greatest games in the genre, as it can proudly stand amongst them. Well, that's pretty much all I have to say about this game. Sorry for the long wait. I hope you all enjoyed the review, but there's still 3 other main entries to look at and a couple of spin-offs, so you can look forward to more in the coming weeks. As always, it's been Darren the Gaming Pilgrimage. Till next time. Hey everyone, sorry again for the long wait for this review. I had to replay the entire game when it got released on the PlayStation Network, and I had other setbacks, but you know the story, same old, same old. I know some of you are going to be thinking, Darren, why are you so positive about the game? Do you have nostalgia for it? But this was actually my first time going through the entire game, and I enjoyed every minute of it, and I think most of you who haven't played it yet will feel the same. So anyway, as usual, I hope you liked the video. Like it if you like it, subscribe if you want to see more, and you can always click on this video here to go back to the last part of the Suikoden Retrospective. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys.